Meet some men who've beat the odds to become true everyday heroes. That's now on Connection. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Connections from the Muhammad Ali Center in downtown Louisville. I'm Renee Shaw. When you look and listen to Lonnie Clinkscale, our guest today, it might be hard to imagine that at one time he was a severe stutterer and suffered from learning disabilities as a kid growing up. He's written a book about his experiences called Hey Dummy that gives hope and encouragement to kids who were just like him. The biography is a testimony of an overcomer and a boost to kids' self-esteem, and we're very happy to have the author of the Cinderella story, Lonnie Clinkscale, with us today. Thank you, Lonnie, for coming on and talking to us about this book. This is a great book. It's a tearjerker, and it's a tiny book in many ways. You can finish it in 2 or 3 hours, but it packs a lot of emotion in it. Tell me how it was for you to write this book and what the message is that you want to convey.
First, I want to say I'm very elated to have this great opportunity to be here today. Hey Dummy, a testimony of an overcomer, is a true story about my life having learning disabilities. And when I first began writing this message, it was really in a journal. And it so happened that I went to a special function with my daughter for a play, and I was sitting next to a publisher, and we began to conversate and what have you, and I began to share with her that I have a journal. After looking at that journal, she said, well, you know what, you have a message here, and it's a message of your life, and it is something that our youth, our young people need to hear, that they can do all things if they set their mind to it, that they do have a purpose, but they must apply themselves.
And even if they have struggles, that they can still be overcomers, because you were an overcomer. You had a severe learning disability. You write in the book that you would be afraid to go to the blackboard because you couldn't measure up 2 + 2 or couldn't write your name on the blackboard. I mean, that's a traumatic thing for a kid to experience.
Yes, it is, especially from coming from an environment, a dysfunctional home, being told that you'll never be anything in life. Nevertheless, with the help of special educators that really motivated me as a child to help me to understand that I can accomplish anything if I set my mind to it. And that's the message that I share today in the various schools and organizations and what have you, to let our youth know that there is hope. But you must apply yourself.
Right.
And if Lonnie Clinkscale can do it,
Yeah.
then you can also do it.
Anybody can do it. That's great. Well, and it's also a good testimony to teachers, because you write in the book about how you had some bad teachers who kind of went along with the thoughts that the kids were expressing, but you also had some teachers who really took an interest in you and didn't give up on you because you had an issue with learning. So talk to us about how this book can be an inspiration for teachers as well.
Well, in many cases, for an example, a lot of the teachers, when I resided in Ohio, they used the Hey Dummy as a testimony of an overcomer for new teachers that need to understand really what a child actually goes through living in the inner city. And by reading the Hey Dummy, a testimony of an overcomer, it really has inspired them, and it has also enlightened them. So that way they know how to understand and how to deal with a child such as myself in the past.
And you talk about your parents, I guess particularly your father, who had called you a dummy. How did that affect you?
Well, every child looks up to their parents. And when I look at my dad at that time, my dad was very frustrated because I could not read, could not write, as well as the teacher was frustrated with me. And that's why when I went up to the chalkboard, they said, well, you know, you can't add 2 + 2 and you'll never be anything in life. And that's coming from some of the teachers. But nevertheless, that despite those few setbacks, you had some good educators. For an example, Dr. Rossi, that took me in as a child and said, Lonnie, you know what, we believe in you. And the issues that you have with your learning disabilities, we're going to help you. And to summarize that, with the help of those special teachers, was able to graduate in the top of my class, was able to represent our entire school. in public speaking, in which we took first place.
That's right.
So
that's
who would
right.
ever thought
Right.
that the child that was an F student, the child that had a learning disability, would be able to rise to the top,
Right.
to be able to share that hope, to let other students know that they can accomplish anything if they put their mind to it.
Amen. And I will tell you that this book has a very deep spiritual message to it, because you talk about the difference was God. The turnaround was God. So can you talk about how that spiritual transformation really manifested itself in how you were physically and how you taught or spoke and how you learned from that point on?
There's in Youngstown, Ohio, is one of the roughest streets in the city of Youngstown called Hillman Street. And I could recall as a young child walking down that street and really didn't know what to do, because I had to, as a young child, you had to fight your way through the drug dealers, and then you had to come home and fight. But there was a sign that was posted on a counseling center on Hillman Street, and it said that you are somebody because God doesn't make any junk. And as a child, that had an impact on my mind.
Right.
So then when I went inside of that counseling center, it was a teacher by the name of Irma Davis. And Irma Davis began to take me in, and she began to mold me and shape me, and to be able to instill in with me the principles of the church. And that motivated me as a child to understand that, yes, I can do it. I don't have to be an F student. I don't have to sell drugs. That I can be somebody if I apply myself and put God first.
Yeah, and applying yourself too is important, that you just can't do it just through prayer, but that God also wants you to have some preparation for the task ahead of you. Absolutely. Well, you've got some new things on the horizon. Hey Dummy, of course, people can find out about this book and they can visit your website, which we have on the screen. But you've also got a new project in the works, so tell us about that.
I have a few projects. The first being, I have another book that's coming out, and hopefully I will have that out by December. And the title of it is Shacking Up. Shacking Up with Demons. It's a spiritual book. And I have another book coming out called The African Male, a Royal Seed in Jeopardy.
So tell us what those two books are about.
Well, the Shacking Up with Demons is basically talks about how generational curses. It talks about how we have found ourselves in many cases in bad situations, and we don't know how we got there. But when you study generations of curses and what have you, you'll find yourself, sometimes you think that you're in love with the person, but you'll find yourself that you're shacking up with the demonic spirit. And we go into more details on that. The African Male, a Royal Seed in Jeopardy, that talks about homicides, and how there's a purpose for our young men, there's a purpose for our young women, but there's something that's out there. There's a plan to destroy our males. And again, that can tie into many things. So we talk about how the African male is a royal seed, and how we must put things in place to help them to understand that they can accomplish anything that they put their mind to it, that they must go to school. They must educate themselves. If they have the mind to sell drugs, they have the mind to run their own businesses. So Royal Seed in Jeopardy, that's basically what that consists of. So, are you preaching? Well, because people are listening thinking, this man is preaching man right here. Well, I would say that there is a calling in my life as far as ministry, and ministry consists of many things. It consists of writing. I enjoy, because you look at somebody that never stuttered over all of their words. That's what I used to do. So whenever I could recall in Dr. Rossi's class, some years ago as a child, and I always did say, Lord, I wish I could speak. And so that opportunity has been given to me to go to the various schools and organizations. So sometimes I just get excited. That's okay. Get excited because it's all, as they would say, that it's all good. It's all good. That's right. And to look at the fact that, you were called a dummy, and you did have a speech impediment, and you are now the successful owner of your own company, an author and a minister perhaps in your own right. I mean, you really are a case study in what overcoming is about. Yes. And that's a very powerful message to young people who struggle with their own identity sometimes. I'd like to say that we got to instill into our children that their minds is a pearl. and that they can learn just about anything. We must instill it within our children that you're not so dumb that you cannot learn if you study, but you're not so smart that you will learn if you do not study.
Yeah, interesting. That you still have to do the work.
Yes, you have to apply yourself.
Right.
Because no one owes you anything. You got to apply yourself. So often, and one time I went to speak at an organization, and one of the young men said, well, they owe me something. I said, nobody owes you anything.
Right.
You got to apply yourself.
That's right.
You
Absolutely.
have to make the difference.
Absolutely. And for kids, the book, I think, Hey Dummy, going back to this, it can be an inspiration for those who feel like they're hopeless, because you even talk about putting a gun to your head or trying to commit suicide and it being blocked.
Yes.
So there are people who do feel like they get in such a position of loneliness that that's their only escape is to take their own life. And this is a testimony of that can be turned around, that you can change and you have a better future ahead of you than your current present.
It's very important that parents really spend that quality time with their children, because you never know what a child is going through. Because as a child, that happened to me. But again, that counseling center, Irma Davis, who spoke life, that let you know that there is a purpose, because God doesn't make any junk.
That's right. And God can touch your life, and your ministry is called Touch Someone Life Ministries. Tell us about this organization that you are the CEO and founder of.
Well, Touch Someone's Life is really sharing my testimony, going to the various schools and organizations to instill within our children and our youth and our adults that there is hope, that you can accomplish anything if you set your mind to it.
Right. So you travel all over. Is it just Jefferson County? How often do you travel?
That's the plan. I travel all over. I am in the process of looking at taking this very book and taking it to the next level and going into film production.
Oh, wow.
So we're working on that in that aspect. And the goal is with Touch Someone's Life is to eventually not only to do the writing, but also take that writing and put it into film.
Watch out, Spike Lee.
There you go.
And you want to make sure that you maintain that message of spirituality.
Yes.
And the Christian message. And sometimes that's hard to do with companies that are looking at the bottom line solely. So has that been a struggle, and are you having to compromise a little?
That has been a great struggle, because I had a very renowned company that wanted to take the Hey Dummy book and make it into a motion picture and said, well, hey, we can make millions of dollars out of this project. But the only thing is, you have to take God out of it. You can't use the word Jesus. And if we take this book, we're going to do it the way we want to do it. And I did not sign that contract because, it's just, to me, it's like selling the book for 30 pieces of silver. And I just can't do that. So I believe that God will make a way.
Right, and that there is an audience for that, because we've had all kinds of movies that have come out and talked about religion, and certainly there is an audience for that. Bottom line it for us, Lonnie, what's the message that you want to send to some struggling young boy or girl or young woman or man who feels like they're at the end of their rope, and not just through the book Hey Dummy, but through your whole entire message and your ministry? What is it you want to tell them?
My message to our audience would be that you can do all things through Christ that will strengthen you. My message to you is that there is hope, and that you can accomplish any goal that you set your mind to. That's my message.
Amen. Well, thank you, Lonnie Klingscale, for being with us. And if you want more information about his book, Hey Dummy, and his other projects that are in the works, please check out his website. We had that on the screen for you. And we appreciate you coming in. We'll have to have you back when everything else takes off and the new books come out and the film is being made. I hope that you'll give us the time then.
I sure will.
When you get to be Mr. Big Stuff, you still remember us in Kentucky. Thank you very much, Lonnie Klingscale, for being with us today.
Thank you.